In November, Jamie King, the mother of Melly, was involved in a legal deposition for a multi-million-dollar wrongful death lawsuit. This lawsuit, filed on behalf of the family of Christopher Thomas Jr., accuses several individuals, including Jamie King, of being responsible for his death. The deposition, however, did not go as expected. It became apparent that scheduling Jamie King's deposition had been an ongoing challenge, with delays from both her defense and other parties involved. Despite these hurdles, the deposition was finally scheduled, but it was largely a waste of time, leaving many questions unanswered. The motion filed for the deposition renewal and to compel Jamie King to answer questions was based on a number of issues. The plaintiffs argued that Jamie King had violated court orders during the deposition process, leading to unnecessary delays and frustration. The motion, filed on October 23, 2020, outlined a history of evasive tactics used by King and her defense team to avoid participating fully in discovery. These delays and actions were seen as contemptuous, with the plaintiffs contending that King was doing everything she could to avoid providing answers. At the heart of the lawsuit, the plaintiffs were seeking justice for the death of Christopher Thomas Jr., and they accused the defense team of using every possible means to obstruct the legal process. Jamie King, according to the motion, claimed that forthcoming evidence would prove the innocence of her son, Jamal Demons, and his associate, Cortland Henry, both of whom were allegedly involved in the incident. King's defense argued that the plaintiffs were simply seeking to extort money, a claim that was both combative and deeply contentious. Jamie King's actions, as described in the filing, were problematic from the start. King was ordered by the court to appear for a deposition, but she consistently found ways to avoid or delay it. In March of 2022, a judge issued a ruling granting the plaintiff's motion and ordered the deposition to take place within 70 days. However, once again, King and her counsel disregarded this order. Instead of complying with the court's directive, King's deposition was delayed until June of 2022. Around the same time, Jamie King was posting on social media, showing herself out partying and living a normal life, despite the claims of being ill with COVID-19. This created a significant amount of public backlash. King was seen attending events and posting late-night photos of herself, with captions that suggested she was feeling fine. When questioned about this behavior, her legal team was asked to provide proof of her COVID-19 diagnosis. The plaintiffs questioned her integrity, highlighting the inconsistency between her public appearances and her claimed illness. In June 2022, King failed to appear on time for her deposition. She and her criminal defense counsel were several minutes late, and when the deposition finally began, it was filled with unnecessary delays. King answered some preliminary questions, but then invoked the Fifth Amendment multiple times to avoid answering further. Her responses were few and far between, as she selectively chose when to remain silent. The deposition quickly became a frustrating exercise, with King using her constitutional right to remain silent in a way that many found evasive and obstructive. The questioning during the deposition began with basic background questions. Jamie King was asked about her relationship with her son, Jamal Demons, and other family members. She confirmed that Jamal was her son and that his father was Dante Taylor, though she did not seem to know much about any potential disputes regarding paternity. When asked whether Jamal had any siblings, King confirmed he had brothers and sisters, but when questioned about her professional life, her answers became more guarded. She stated that she was a nurse, but did not hold any other professional roles or responsibilities. One of the key areas of questioning focused on King's professional connections and whether she had ever worked with Jamal Demons in any capacity. She denied managing his music career or any related businesses, but the questions quickly turned to more contentious topics. The focus shifted to her knowledge of Jamal's activities and his association with the YNW movement, which was central to the case. King was asked about her involvement in YNW and whether she had any role in its operations. She repeatedly invoked her Fifth Amendment right, refusing to answer these questions. The plaintiffs' attorneys found King's refusal to answer frustrating, especially given her willingness to speak openly on public platforms like podcasts and interviews. While Jamie King had discussed her son's innocence publicly on numerous occasions, she refused to provide any meaningful answers in a court setting. This created a stark contrast between her public statements and her conduct during the deposition, leading the plaintiffs to accuse her of hypocrisy. The attorneys questioned how she could publicly assert her son's innocence while refusing to answer critical questions under oath. Throughout the deposition, Jamie King's legal team made it clear that they intended to limit her participation. Mr. Trackman, King's attorney, openly stated that they would not allow the deposition to go on for hours of repeated Fifth Amendment assertions. His statement was seen as an attempt to shut down the deposition and avoid any further questioning. He also made comments about the lawyer's billable hours, which were seen as an attempt to trivialize the seriousness of the situation. It was a clear attempt to dismiss the plaintiffs' concerns and shut down the legal process in a way that was viewed as unprofessional. Despite these interruptions, the plaintiffs' legal team persisted. They brought up a series of questions that King refused to answer. One of the most significant lines of questioning concerned Jamal Demons and his potential involvement in the deaths of Christopher Thomas Jr. and others. King was asked if she knew whether her son had any involvement in tampering with evidence or if he had ever carried weapons to school. These questions were seen as crucial to understanding Jamal's background and potential culpability. However, once again, King invoked the Fifth Amendment and refused to answer. In addition to questions about her son, King was also asked about the history of violence and criminal activity within her family. The plaintiff's attorneys asked about incidents involving her husband, Mr. King, and whether he had ever physically abused Jamal. They also asked about the presence of firearms and drugs in the household when Jamal was a child. These questions were aimed at understanding the environment Jamal grew up in and whether it had influenced his later actions. However, like many of the other questions, these too were met with an invocation of the Fifth Amendment. As the deposition continued, the questions became increasingly detailed and personal. The plaintiff's attorneys sought to uncover any information that might shed light on the circumstances surrounding Christopher Thomas Jr., his death, and whether Jamal Demons or anyone else in the family had any role in it. They asked about the ownership of the YNW brand and the relationships between various key players, including Anthony Williams and Sackchaser. These questions were seen as critical to understanding the broader context of the case, but King continued to refuse to answer. One particularly bizarre moment during the deposition involved the mention of Cole Bennett, a name that had not previously come up in the case. The plaintiff's attorneys questioned whether King was aware of any interactions between her son and Bennett, which was puzzling to many watching. The questions seemed to jump from one topic to another, with the plaintiffs attempting to connect various dots, including the possibility of conflicts within the YNW movement and its impact on the events leading to Thomas's death. The deposition became a frustrating ordeal for everyone involved. The plaintiffs were seeking answers, but Jamie King's repeated assertions of the Fifth Amendment hindered their progress. At one point, King was even asked about her involvement in the destruction of evidence related to the murders, which she again refused to answer. The plaintiffs' legal team felt that King was using her constitutional rights in a way that was both excessive and detrimental to the pursuit of justice. In the end, the plaintiffs' attorneys filed a motion to compel Jamie King to appear at a renewed deposition and to provide answers to the questions that she had avoided by invoking her Fifth Amendment rights. They argued that King's refusal to participate in the deposition was a violation of the court's orders, and that she was using her legal privilege to obstruct the discovery process. The plaintiffs sought sanctions against King for her conduct, hoping that the court would intervene and force her to comply with the legal process. The case surrounding Christopher Thomas Jr.'s death remains unresolved, with many unanswered questions and ongoing legal battles. Jamie King's role in the case and her conduct during the deposition will likely continue to be a point of contention in the coming months. As the legal process moves forward, the plaintiffs are determined to uncover the truth and hold those responsible accountable for their actions.